Well, a pleasant good evening and welcome to 5 at 5 on Cloud 9 on ACTN The Voice, your top 5 stories to 5 p.m. In our first story this afternoon, well, who have ears to hear will hear. And right now, the noise level at carnival events has the EMA concerned that many people will not be hearing too well in the future. The EMA is making it clear today to all carnival promoters and supporters that they are not planning to kill the carnival, but will enforce the rules that guides noise regulations. On Saturday, the promoters of the Stomped Fete at the Queen's Park Oval was ordered to reduce the volume. The promoters, upset with the decision, said that the order compromised the patrons' enjoyment at the fete. Chief Executive Officer of the EMA, Hayden Romano, said the rules are not new and the fete last Saturday was not targeted. He said they were not in compliance and the noise pollution control rules, and there were many other events over the weekend which complied with the rules and they were successful. All they are requesting, he says, is that promoters obey and observe the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Romano said that is just the beginning, as the EMA plans on clamping down on all events. He says if their plan was to silence Carnival, then there will be no event, and beyond that statement, he believes that there has been no justification further because that is not their intention. He says people enjoy Carnival, not noise. The Trinidad and Tobago Association of Promoters will meet tonight to address the issue and the way forward. In other news at this time, a man has been shot dead while trying to save the life of a relative. He has been identified as 23-year-old Dominic Kun. According to police reports, around 10 p.m. on Monday, the deceased was at his home at Kun Trace in Malabar with other relatives when an explosion was heard. Kun reportedly ran into a front room of the home and he saw an older relative struggling with an armed man. Kun rushed to the aid of his relative and attempted to take away the firearm from the assailant. However, during the struggle, the firearm went off. He was hit several times to the chest. The assailant fled the scene on foot. Kun died at the scene while the other relative was rushed for medical attention at the Arima District Hospital for injuries to his chest. He is said to be in a stable condition. Investigations are continuing. In some other news at this time, another day of honor for our former head of state, as this time his body was taken to the University of the West Indies, where he served as principal before being elevated to this country's highest office. Scores of individuals flocked the campus to pay their respects, inclusive of students and faculty. Pro Vice Chancellor of the University, Brian Copeland, in reminiscing of the life of the former president, George Maxwell Richards, said that he brought about true social change at the university. Many have expressed over the last few days of the great humanitarian he was, as the future of our young generation was very close to his heart. It is no surprise that the core reason behind his annual Max and Friends Carnival Fete was to assist students in need.
Many of the students, and these are pre-gate days, were disadvantaged, and we thought it appropriate to find some means of providing them with bursaries. So we came up with the idea, my wife and I,
Tomorrow is that
to hold a carnival fete. Now this would be an all-inclusive, high-premium fete.
Yes.
Best of drink, best of food, in a excellent ambiance, which is what UWI provided. Good music. And so we started this, and it was highly successful from the onset.
Yeah.
And we're able to generate the kind of income which could help.
The funeral service for the late former President George Maxwell Richards will take place tomorrow at the National Academy of the Performing Arts from 10 a.m. In some other news, I'm going to bring you more details in this story. There are some concerns being raised by environmentalists about the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway extension from Kamuto to Sandy Grande. Last week, heavy equipment moved into the area as preparation for the construction of the highway along the southern boundary of the Aripo savannas. I want to bring you more details, and what you're seeing here is some footage from Mr. Aboud expressing his concerns and what exactly is being done to the environment, in particular the Aripo savannas. I'm bringing more details on this story coming up later on during our Wise Up segment. In some international news at this time, 13 brothers and sisters who were held captive by their parents have been rescued after being tortured for years. The children range from ages 2 to 29 years of age. When they were found, they were dirty, malnourished, and some shackled to their beds. Their parents have since been arrested and are facing charges of torture and child endangerment. Police were alerted as to what was happening at the home after one of the siblings managed to escape. We have more from the BBC.
They look like a big, happy family. The children a little pale, perhaps, but smiling. Photographs on Facebook show the Turpins visiting Disneyland and in Las Vegas as their apparently proud parents renewed their wedding vows. Now, David and Louise Turpin are under arrest, charged with torture and child endangerment. Their children in hospital.
In the time we live in, it's unfortunate to see this. It's actually heartbreaking for the staff, and it's unbelievable what you see.
The horror on Yearwood Road was uncovered early on Sunday morning when a 17-year-old girl escaped with a mobile phone and called the police. At the home, officers found 12 siblings and were shocked to discover that 7 were adults, the eldest 29. The captives were dirty and malnourished, say police, shackled to their beds with chains and padlocks in dark and foul-smelling surroundings. As reporters arrived in the quiet suburb east of Los Angeles, neighbors said they were stunned.
The kids were not sociable at all. They were didn't want to look at people, they were just doing what they're doing and no eye contact with society.
You would never see anyone visit. You never see anyone come outside. All you would really see is that they'd go out, maybe make a grocery run, and that was about it.
As you see, I have a daughter, and it's very horrifying, that could happen in this community.
Well, there's no hint at all here of the grim conditions inside this home. And the questions about what happened are mounting, not least how long were the siblings held captive and why. James Cook, BBC News, Perris in California.
Well, a happy ending to that story. And that brings us to the end of our 5 at 5 news report. Top 5 stories at 5 p.m. right here on Cloud. Now when we come back, I'm going to give some more details on this development with the Aripo savannas. And this week, we are going to be focusing a lot on some of the burning national issues that are facing us. As you know, at the beginning of the year, gruesome murders of women in our country. So today we're speaking about abuse in TNT, both women and men. It's a very sensitive topic. I'm hoping that we can answer many questions that you may have about this. It's like a recurring decimal. No matter how much we try to grapple with it, it continues to be a problem in many communities. But again, we cannot stop. We have to make our voices heard. Let's take a break. When we come back, lots more on Cloud 9.
This is Apostle Judy Karim of the Greater Love Christian Center, inviting you to join us every second and last Tuesday of the month on ACTN The Voice, as we bring to you the Word of God that will challenge you, bless you, and take you into your greatest life ever.
All right, welcome back to Cloud 9 on ACTN The Voice. Let's go to a Wise Up segment at this time quickly, and I'll give you the update on this story. All right, so last week, as you know, the work has commenced on the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway extension from Camuto to Sandy Grande, and it may be a blessing to many, but to some it's a curse. And that's because environmentalists are taking concern that part of the highway extension, it is passing through the southern boundary of the Arepo savannas. It's a similar issue that happened in south with the down by the Mosquito Creek there, and even other areas in south whereby certain wildlife, for instance, natural landmarks were being destroyed, right? So I'm going to read something briefly here, and then I'm going to show you a video clip from Mr. Aboud, Gary Aboud, that is, about, giving some details as to his concerns. The Arepo savannas support a diverse group of organisms. These include the red brocket deer, armadillo, lap, and porcupine, and the ocelot, designated environmentally sensitive species whose population is threatened. Rare and vulnerable species of birds include the scarlet-shouldered parrot, the white-tailed golden throat hummingbird, I know that one very well, the savanna hawk, the sulphur flycatcher, and red-bellied macaw, which feeds on the seeds of the rish palms. In addition, the savanna supports endemic species of flora and rare orchids, club moss, and several species of bladderwort and the sundew, and insectivorous consumes insects, plant which are not found anywhere else in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the most outstanding stands of Moorish palms in the country. They are calling on all citizens to reject the move by the Ministry of Works and Transport and NIDCO to steal a march against persons seeking to preserve our prized environmental heritage. Let's go to this clip where you'll see for yourself what exactly they are referring to. That area you're seeing there, of course, that has already been cleared. That is part of the problem that Mr. Gary Aboud and his team are addressing at this point in time. All right, and I continue. We make the point that the price of development is high. Well, it shouldn't be to the point whereby we are losing so much of our natural landmarks and our natural flora and fauna, as the case may be, and wildlife. Right, it's something that has been addressed in the past, and it continues to be a problem today. But we're going to bring you that clip a little later on. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to go straight into our topic this evening: abuse in Trinidad and Tobago. Already 4 women, I believe it is, have already been murdered. 3 of them linked to domestic situations, as the case may be. Where are we going from here? So the title of our show this evening is called Dear Diary. Dear Diary. Because many of these women have secrets that they are afraid to speak about, because of fear that there's no one to listen. Let's take a break.
This is Apostle Judy Karim of the Greater Love Christian Center, inviting you to join us every second and last Tuesday of the month on ACTN The Voice, as we bring to you the Word of God that will challenge you, bless you, and take you into your greatest life ever. Word of God that will challenge you, bless you, and take you into your greatest life ever.
All right, and welcome back to Cloud 9 on ACT, and a very, very serious topic indeed, but we're hoping to leave with a smile as always. As you know, we're always about being solution-based, and we're not going to give up the fight on this burning issue. Let's go to our Let's Chat segment at this time, introduce our special guest for this evening. All right, welcome back. So let's welcome a very good friend of mine and the founder of the Victim Support Foundation, Mrs. Loverne. Henry, how are you?
Hello, Sheldon.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm saying Happy New Year in the context of our viewers, but I would have told her before these, since last week. Right, good. And thank you for coming. And it is really a blessing when you could move in the spirit, because I've never seen the website. Right. Hear this? Never seen the website. And up till late this evening, I'm like, okay, what's a good title for the show? And I said, Dear Diary. And now I'm finding out that there's a
article segment
called
Dear Diary.
Dear Diary. Mm-hmm. So you tell me, what was the reason for Dear Diary? And then I'll tell you what God told me here. So let's hear what was the whole vision behind Dear Diary?
Well, as part of the Victim Support Foundation's website, we did want to include stories from primary and secondary victims, giving their side of the story, as well as giving their journey, and trying to stay away from being a crime story. So that you'd find many of the articles there, and we had quite a few of our volunteers who are inclined to being authors and media personnel and that type of thing. They would have gone around and did live interviews with different persons and wrote their stories, or you could have submitted your story to be posted on that segment, and that's where we have over 15 articles from different persons, including a segment of myself, my story, and from secondary victims throughout the entire personnel.
In terms of Their Diary, so can individuals also, do they have to put their actual names, or they can?
Oh no, right. No. Many of the articles do not identify anyone, because it contrary to crime stories and trying to situations where we're trying to avoid where a victim is exploited. So it's not really so much as to who it happened to, but to identify that these traumatic situations happen almost every day, and we each find deep in ourselves different coping mechanisms, and the journey looks quite similar, no matter how different the name is. The journey and the process has many similarities.
That question before was deliberate, and I'll tell you why. And there are many who I'm sure would have taken offense to the statement that I've made time and time again. Because as a journalist, I mean, I've been in this thing for more than 20 years now. And there seems to be a thrust whereby in media now, the more insensitive you are, you know,
yes,
the more ratings
the more you
get.
Yeah.
The more insensitive you are, they hold up your hand as a hero in terms of, and I'm saying that to say the issue for me is not reporting a story.
No.
That's not the issue. Report your story. But if your story is not bringing a solution,
Yes.
or is not bringing a sense of hope to the country, then what exactly are we doing? Are we fueling a flame that is already more or less out of control?
Correct.
For someone who has been a victim of abuse, and for those who don't know, I mean, if you wish to share during the course of our interview, are you concerned with the media's portrayal? And I'm not talking social media here, because as far as I'm seeing these days, social media is feeding the media poison apple. I'm being very honest, because we take things from social media and just amplify it and make it news. And I'm asking myself the question, where is the in-depth investigative journalism and research, and you know, not just grab what's on social media, and because you print it first or because you air it first on air, it becomes so. Being a former victim, how has this affected you?
Well, the being a victim of violence, specifically,
right, violence, yes.
You would find that exploitation, you know, it's almost very much bearing on cannibalistic, where we have become so insensitive or desensitized as a people that we can no longer just blame the media for being insensitive, because the media themselves can also flip and say, well, that's what the people want. You know, so we have empowered our population with our own cameras and our own camera crews, for want of a better term, just through technology. And it's almost as though, you know, we are trying to blame the vehicle for you know, for a manslaughter and not the driver. So that at the end of the day, although media plays a significant role as a stakeholder in managing crime and violence in our society, it really does come back down to us. Who is behind the camera? So that even if, as you said, you know, social media feeds into the general traditional media methods.
Just scary.
Yeah, which is scary. That means you now have a population of novice journalists, for want of a better word, trying to get their own story. And if we don't allow the formal and traditional methods of media to uphold what is termed respectful reporting in many other parts of the world, and be that filter.
Right. But who's going to filter?
But that's what I'm saying. It lies, the legislation is in place for the formal and traditional modes of media, not the average person. But at the same time, if a novice journalist, or as I say, anyone who has a cell phone, right, feeds the media this type of material, and the media shuts them down, they will no longer be interested in trying to seek a story. So eventually, once the formal bodies that exist continue to empower these civilian journalists through accepting stories and even purporting what would have been done very, you know, novice or crass or gory, you are going to find that people, you know, everyone wants that spot in the light. So we do have to have more than one approach, a multifaceted approach, in trying to curb these social effects and negative social effects of, I would say, a media gone rampage. Because it's not just the person behind the camera that's holding the phone while somebody dies, but it's also the media house that takes that clip and then uses it for their own gain.
There has been a serious disconnect in communities, in homes, in the government. Generally across Trinidad and Tobago, there has been a serious disconnect. And you see it on social media, how it plays out, how we speak with each other. People make jokes about it now that there's actually a very popular video right now on social media where this young woman met this guy, and he made a statement, "I'm not on social media," and it turned into this horror flick.
Oh.
Whereby, you know, because he's not on social media, she's wondering now if he's this mass murderer. He has no blueprint on social media. He has no picture. And as funny as it may be, it speaks a very dark place where we are, that if you're not on social media, you no longer exist. It's not relevant. And I'm saying that to say that when there's a particular young lady on social media, she goes on live like every week crying of being abused. And I am yet to see how people have been making comments and jokes and where did that disconnect begin? Why have we become so disconnected? Particularly, I know we're going to deal with men and women, but I'll focus on women for now. Why have we become so disconnected to what a woman feels? Because that's why I had it entitled Dear Diary. Because a lot of women feel, you know what? Why talk? Why bother? What's the point? The authorities are going to act too slow.
Yeah.
They're putting things in place on paper, but that's as far as it goes. What's the point? My mother doesn't care. My father doesn't care. They're going to protect the assailant anyhow if it's something within a family, if it's in the community, depending if the person has some sort of,
yes, rank
he's
or
well
status.
established or rank or status. Look, right now we have a situation that I've been highlighting quite often with a particular school, with a particular principal, and it's like we turn a blind eye. Why? What has led to that disconnect?
I definitely subscribe to one of the strategies at the foundation where the stakeholders of society each have a responsibility to curb violence in its entirety. And deciding and taking up that mantle for each stakeholder, whether it be the state through legislation, whether it be the business community through protecting policies to protect their employees, whether it be the media through respectful reporting, whether it be the community where you have faith-based organizations and just neighborhoods and villages being able to stand up and say, okay, enough is enough. So that when we begin to talk about solutions, it's never just mono. It's always going to be multifaceted, because it's a multifaceted trauma that has gotten us into this position. And it's also going to take some time and commitment to moving forward by all those stakeholders. So even though we may say, all right, we want our media to accept respectful reporting, we want our media to begin doing follow-up segments where you highlight an incident with a specific victim or secondary victim or community, and then you do follow-up segments on them 3 months after or 6 months after, that type of thing. Being able to be not just exploit the situation, but to also be a solution to those persons that you're reporting on. Simple things like that. And then you have your state being able to enforce legislation. Up to now, we do not have a victims charter. It's very, and many of the incidents that we would see in the news and that type of thing, legislation that exists, when even though you do catch the perpetrator, the impact of that is a slap on the wrist, because many of our laws are very archaic. So that, you know, it's never going to be a one-time, one-off solution. It is going to be everyone, all stakeholders saying, okay, this is enough, we're not going to condone this anymore. And this is how we're going to move forward. Everyone connecting and taking a responsibility for their role in us being where we are.
I had a show last week where we discussed crime in general, but now we're kind of zeroing in on the whole concept of violence against women today. And of course, we're live on Facebook. You can send us your comments there. And I remember when I read the comments last week, let's say there were about 10, 12 comments there. about 8 or 9 in their own jargon said, what's the point? What's the point? Because in their mindset is that we've been down this road.
Right.
We've seen the violence. We'll crowd for 9 days and then we go back to normal.
Yeah.
Carnival on 12th of February, who cares?
7 days wonder.
You know. So how, and that is part of where that poison of insensitivity is coming in as well. People will reach a point whereby it doesn't make sense speaking.
Yeah.
So the victims now become angry. They become bitter. They lash out. Some become introvert, and the cycle continues.
Yes.
What keeps you going?
And,
what keeps you going, even amidst what will many would say be an uphill battle?
You know, my journey of recovery, and I have to say because you know, the journey was not just myself. The journey was my entire family. You know, being able to move forward and to get from one step to the next. And, you know, even in identifying at that point in time, I knew specifically that this was not me, just for me. That means the intent or the tenacity or the decision that I'm not going to remain here. I'm not going to remain as a victim. That really came from my relationship with God, my relationship with the Holy Spirit, and being able to still find that peace in the midst of it, and understanding that what I'm going through now is not just for me. It's for my children, it's for my neighbor, it's for the future, it's for the next victim around the corner. And that even when we go through negative experiences, it's not to be wasted on pain. It's to be used to ensure that it's a tool to drive us forward. So at the point in time, I just definitely knew that this was not the end. I had no idea why. I had no idea what it would become. But I did know that it was something that needed to be done. And from that, even moving forward, now every time, every phone call, every email, every, you know, Facebook, you know, comment, every time you get that feedback that someone has just connected with hope. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. Because we don't hold tomorrow. So what we do hold on to as recovering or even as survivors is hope. And being able to bring that hope to others really makes the journey worthwhile.
You know, I'm listening to you, and there's a book that I'm reading now called The Bait of Satan, and it speaks of offense.
Yes.
And, you know, I think it was chapter 4 or 5 there about the author was speaking about, you know, if you look at how a tree really blossoms and grows, it has to get rain and sun and harsh breeze blowing, and it's not the best conditions at times.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
But it's the only way that that tree will toughen up and the roots will grow and remain. And I think one thing we have to understand is that people go through things in seasons to strengthen us, not just for yourself.
Correct.
But just as a tree will feed many, it's also. And I mean, when we come up from the break, I want you to, for those women out there, and even I say this, children, because it amazes me how many children and women, as in girls, are victims of violence, even right in their homes by their loved ones. I mean, we hear it every day, but like the numbers just escalating.
I wonder about that comment, because I hear many people saying that, but that it escalates. I do believe that because we are in an age of technology,
you're just hearing about it more.
Hearing about it more.
Understood.
Because in days gone by, it was considered normal that it would be okay for a father to hit his wife ever so often, you know, if she didn't do something correct or that type of thing. So that it probably was even accepted as part of the culture. It's part of the norm, you know. So in that regard, the culture and society has changed. I don't want to say the word evolved, but we have changed in that we have taken to the streets, for want of a better word, with everything, because everything becomes a reality TV or reality segment.
True.
So what it really is to me that what has been happening in the dark all along is just now being purported. Exactly. It's now being reported, and not, of course, to the powers that be to bring change, but reported and shared to bring attention.
Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to go a lot deeper into our conversation right here on Cloud 9 on ACTN. Dear Diaries, our segment, and of course, send us your comments on our Facebook Live page. Stay tuned. Right back.
Hi, I'm Reverend Valerie Ramkalawan from the Christ Approved Revival Tabernacle. You can tune on every first and last Wednesday of the month on ACTN The Voice. And I'm there 10:30 p.m. 15 minutes, you can tune on and you can be filled with the word of the Lord. Come on and be a part of this station in Jesus' name. God bless you.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACT, and it's always a pleasure to be in your company every Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 and 9.
Welcome to the new season of Football 101. I am your host, Joshua D'Amatos.
Well, it's time for your weekly football news update. I love you, Messi.
Unfortunately, kiss the badge, kiss the badge. Oh,
what's that?
Welcome to this edition of the interview, and as you can see, I'm not alone on the set. I have Marcus, a Liverpool fan, and I have Shakir.
All right, welcome back to Cloud 9 on ACTN The Voice. So what I'm going to do at this time, we're going to go a little deeper into our conversation where Mrs. Henry is going to give us her story. And what I want to do is give you a number, 223-4357. That's 223-4357. It's 223-HELP. I'm going to give you the opportunity to call anonymously. At first, of course, if you are indeed a victim of violence, and that goes for women and men, but as we know, most times, being practical here, it would be women, and they will meet with you, all right? Won't let you, discuss your issues on air, but I think it's really wonderful to have NGOs like yourselves and others out there who are doing their part in the vineyard, as they say,
yes.
To deal with this issue. So for those women out there who may say, you know what, you don't know what I've been through.
Well, and I really do want to emphasize, sometimes we try to categorize our trauma. Well, I didn't, get this, or this didn't happen to me, or that kind of thing. At the end of the day, that psychological, emotional, physical, spiritual, mental impact of negative incidents and negative situations, we all have to walk that road. Mm-hmm. So, I really don't, I don't suggest when you're listening to a story, you're hearing a story, and you begin to compare, well, okay, mine wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it's still very much trauma. Trauma exactly. is trauma, mm-hmm. No matter what. And, even for me, being a survivor, home invasion, physical assault, sexual assault, everything that you can think of, you know, those Lifetime movies, and being pregnant at a point in time as well added a different dynamic to the trauma. And seeing my husband, you know, almost chopped to death, and it takes you into a crossroad that you think you are in a nightmare, and you literally take every day just to see if I'm gonna wake up. Is what is gonna change? When is this entire thing going to end? And even when you are going through the crime or going through the process, the incident, you literally feel as though time stopped. You know, this, you know, on the Matrix, the movie where time slows down, you literally feel like that, where, you know, this is never going to end. But the situation and the process literally began when I was able to identify I had no words. And for me, that's the thing. Each person knows themselves, and they would know what their, what should I say, their breaking point is. And I remember probably a week after my husband came out of the hospital and seeing him for the first time after all these different surgeries and everything. And I literally had no words to say. And I am a very, you know, articulate person. I'm always, you know, on top of things and assertive and that kind of thing. And when I realized that the impact was changing who I knew Loverne to be, that's when I knew we had to reach out for help. So we did access one of the local therapists from our community, from my church, and that began a recovery journey of over 7 years. And I mean, where even our family had to do family sessions together because we are a very close-knit family, so that the impact was not just us, it wasn't just the core, but it was an entire local and international community that was affected by one, or should I say, a group of men's wrong decision. So the choices that we make, even from, you know, from the perpetrator side, from the victim side, from the support systems that exist in the community of the victim, we really were able to take a strategic look at what actually happens in order for there to be a probability of healthy recovery. And that began at home. It began in our minds, it began in our hearts, it began in prayer, where, you know, you ask God, you know, just teach me to trust you again, because I don't trust you right now, you know, but teach me each day how to trust you again.
I think that's the key.
Well,
that's the key, because at that point, a lot of women would say, you know what, how?
Yeah.
And this is where now you really have to lean to him for him to show you what exactly he wants you to learn.
Correct. Well, that's the thing, you know, he is such a father. He's a true father. And, you know, many times it's not that he would say, well, okay, you were supposed to learn X, Y, Z. Of course not. He knows that we are in pain. But he alone can allow the healing process to be so multifaceted that although you think you're healing from this emotional pain, he's actually healing your relationships, he's healing your heart, he's healing your, you know, your career, your job prospects, where you think you're going in life. He's positioning purpose in your heart, because, you know, as a young adult, a young mom at the point in time as well,
busy building my career. I had recently changed jobs, finished studies, ready to conquer the world. Yeah. And then this freight train, I like to call it my 9/11, because I think that we each have a significant time in our journey where we can see that the course has changed. And the course has changed because of external circumstances. And that 9/11 really did help to set me on a course of purpose, where things that I thought was important weren't important anymore.
Let me ask a couple of questions before we got this time going too fast. I'm asking some very pertinent, intimate questions because I know there are young women looking on. You mentioned father. Before we give a synopsis on the foundation and more of what you'll do, and what do you say to a child, a young girl, who didn't grow up with a father, or their father may have been abusive?
Yes.
And then now they may have, on top of being abused by their father, another man abuses them, rape as the case may be. And then you're telling me, you're looking at this young girl and saying, your father in heaven loves you. And they'll be like, well, the examples I had before as fathers ain't necessarily the best. So how am I to trust my father in heaven?
Right.
When, as you would hear, he allowed.
Yep.
What would you say to a young girl or a woman that will come to you with that sort of heaviness on their heart?
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's also me. That's also my story. I spent the majority of my years with a single parent, with my mom, and coming out of situations just like that, domestic violence, and I remember walking out from where I used to live, and I'm walking out to go to work. And I remember telling God that. I told God, I said, you know what? I'm not into this marriage thing, you know. I said, because if it's going to be anything like what I see and what I know it to be, I said, I'm good. Leave me. Let me just take care of my mom and we'll be fine.
Right.
Because I still, in the midst of it all, I still knew that the father that I was seeing earthly was not the father that I knew God to be. And especially from reading his word and seeing him being a father to so many others, and holding on to that scripture that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So at the center of it all, I still knew that there were good fathers, and that ultimately God was the best father. So I think being in that type of environment where, even as a single parent, my mother ensured that all her children grew up in church and you know, and had a relationship with God. I think it's because of that type of foundation that was set way back then. And I'm sure at the point in time, and I want to speak to single mothers as well, don't underestimate the impact of small beginnings. Whatever you know that you can do and invest in your children now, do it. Because that is what would have grown those deep, strong roots, so that when my 9/11 came, I could have still stand and say, you know, I know this is not your purpose, God, you know. So even for women who may not have seen any type of positive male influence, I am here to say that in the midst of it, although you may not see any earthly positive male influence, know that the Father, the God that created you, did not create you to be used by negative male influence. He created you to be his princess, his child. And no matter what, he still has a plan for your life. No matter what and how horrible it gets, he still has a plan for your life. And he's just waiting for you to say, listen, I don't think I can do this by myself. You need to be here with me, God.
Surrender.
Complete surrender. Because he is the only one who gets into our minds and into our hearts and into our spirits that can begin to speak to us and heal us from the inside out. Because we look to human men to try and heal us from the outside in, you know, and it doesn't really work that way.
You know, and that's the thing though, and a lot of what we go through in life and that processing, as they call it, is really to strengthen us for our purpose. As I said, there was a shift. You didn't expect the shift like that, but we see similar stories in the Bible of how God used both men and women through adversity to bring them to a place of, you know what, God allowed this to happen, and he showed me his power, and he showed me how strong. Because I'm sure even prior to this, you didn't think that you would have had all this strength.
Of course not. Of course not. You know, it's never part of your dream, you know, with the white picket fence and the 2 children running in the yard and all that.
But
it's never part of it. Of course. And being able to appreciate this new normal and the new person that is created, and that the new person that grows out of the ashes is part of how you're able to help others. Because if you have not been able to identify and let go of the old person, because I'm no longer the old Loverne, this is part of me, this is who I am, and this is something that has happened, and I have accepted that and used that to move on. And I'm simply saying you can too. And
that's something, I mean, that's something that I've been told even in terms of my own walk. You know, you look back at the things you've been through, things you've done, and then someone told me, don't regret where you've been.
No.
Because it is that same situation that, remember I said, this walk is not, I think we say it so very loosely. This walk is not about me, it's about God. I'm like, be careful what you're saying.
Yeah, it is.
Because if you say it, you will be held accountable. You know, I'm telling you, so sometimes saying it, understand what, because it's really not about you.
No.
And, you know, I really want to, I mean, the joy of the Lord is really your strength. I mean, you have been such a great support for so many women and men through your organization, yourself and your husband, and you're always smiling. No, even though, yes, you have your journey, you've learned to appreciate the joy of the Lord in your life, and that is something that a lot of people, they don't know how. They don't know how. In terms of the foundation, it was 223 help, but you know, what kind of services can people get when they come to you?
Well, we focus specifically on violent crimes. So as a percentage per se, we don't get too many domestic violence clients, but we do get, of course, those severe situations. So it's when it's on the extreme end that we would be part of the recovery process. And as part of that journey, we are not a first responder type of situation, because just as you said, any victim goes through that first, 5-7 day wonder where everybody bombards them. But emotionally and mentally, you really do break, you cut. You cut your, what should I say, you get numb. And the processing of what is happening within those first couple days really makes it a lot more difficult for a victim to absorb what you're trying to do to improve their recovery process. So as part of that, we have services where we sponsor persons for therapy. Because as I said, with multi-trauma and violent crime, we do have, many of our partners are therapists and clinics. So we would handle it that way. And then we also provide practical support where, especially for situations of home violence and home invasion, we have our volunteers come in and help to do some restoration there. And then there's aftercare, where we have support groups in communities. So you can also be part of support groups to be able to enjoy that recovery, not just immediately, but in long term and medium term.
Well, I want to thank you. We are out of time, I do, but thank you so very much for coming, and God's blessings to you and the Victim Support Foundation. The number is 223-4357, 223-4357. God blessings to everyone. Thank you for looking on. Thank you again, and continued blessings to what you all are doing. Take care. God bless.